down and working back and forth across the steel plate called a marver, I can push the hot glass out to where it's usable. I'll then use the hot glass first to pick up some chips of blue glass, then some chips of red glass, and then some white. A bit on the end, a little white on the end. I'll start a bubble. This piece of equipment is traditionally called a glory hole, sometimes referred to as a reheating furnace. It's really nothing more than a very well insulated drum with a heat gun stuck in the side of it. And I use it for two reasons. First off, I can get temperatures in the glory hole that are 300 or 400 degrees hotter than what I can get working out the front door of the glass furnace. That means reheats will be faster, and then the colored chips melt in faster. I also use the glory hole because sometimes the colored chips just don't adhere well, and they fall off. Not a problem in the glory hole, there's no glass in the bottom of it to contaminate. So I've noticed over the last half dozen years or so that many people are really interested in the glory hole, so I thought I'd try to figure out where the name came from.
Big
I
mistake.
think the name came along with many other names for tools, equipment, techniques that we use that came from the Italians. Well, I think what happened was they noticed probably centuries ago that people who work full-time in hot glass would tend to go blind. What they didn't know, we know now, is that not only is a lot of heat coming out of that glass furnace, there's a lot of energy in the visual spectrum, but in a very narrow slice of it. So much so that it can cause damage to your retinas to the point of blindness. Probably there was someone very religious who knew one thing would take away your sight with a glance, transferred the name. I think that's where the term came from. And okay, so I've got the chips are melted in. Now I'm going to try to get a twist in the glass by just using the friction from the hot glass on the cold steel.
That's so pretty. A few times, yeah.
The bubble back. The colors in the glass are made for the most part by adding metal oxides to the raw materials that would otherwise make clear glass. You may already know some of them, like cobalt makes blue glass. That's why it's called cobalt blue. For amethyst purple or black, it's manganese that's added. A little bit for amethyst, a little more for purple, and a whole bunch for black. The most expensive of the colors we use are the rubies and the pink glasses. Those are the ones made with gold. Adding silver can make an amber color, and copper makes most of our greens in one form of copper. Another form makes most of our reds. Bone ash is used to make the transparent colors opal or opaque. I'll look at that a little bit more. And white is probably made by adding selenium to the raw materials, whatever that is. And it's probably modified to lead, zinc, tin, or titanium. And I really don't know what the precise formulas are for any of the colored glasses I use. They're all made in Germany. I just order them from the catalog. One less thing to worry about. Of course, occasionally they'll throw one at you by changing the formula of a color without changing the number, not even an asterisk. And they don't ever work the same. Okay. This is pretty well smoothed out now, but it needs to be very smooth, very symmetrical. Little air bubble inside needs to be well placed. And I can take care of all that shaping here at the bench with this tool called a block. Blocks like this one are made of fruit woods. The set I have here were mostly made of fruit-bearing cherry. The blocks are carved into shape while the wood is still green. Then they're kept in water, so they're waterlogged. And as you might expect, the first time you put a new block to the hot glass, it's only wood it's going to burn. But as it burns, it leaves behind a carbon layer, and that holds some water. So you put that to your hot glass to use it for shaping. That water will turn to steam. You're shaping your hot glass then with that layer of steam on top of the layer of carbon, and the block lasts a lot longer than you might expect. So the next thing I need to do to make a tankard is called taking a gather. That's adding another layer of clear glass over the outside of the bubble in order that I have enough volume of glass that I can expand it out and then shape it into a tankard. I can't add any glass to this bubble just now. The bubble wall's too thin and it's way too hot. If I make a mistake trying to get back in the furnace too soon, the added heat can cause the bubble to collapse, and I just have to start all over. Obviously, I don't want to do that. So I've learned if I put my hand next to the glass, I can feel the heat that's radiated, and then from experience I'll know when I can get back in the glass furnace. And that brings up another question that many people have. They wonder how you can hold on to a stainless steel pipe after you stuck the end of it down in the glass furnace. Well, the stainless steel is a fairly poor conductor of heat. The heat of the glass would rather flow off into the atmosphere than come all the way down the blowpipe. So, here where I hold on to the pipe all the time, it's really not even warm. Further up the pipe where it's discoloring. In this area, there it may be hot enough to cause a burn. Near the glass, a single touch can cause a very serious burn, and out here on the end, well, that's what I like to call the oh my what a silly thing to do area. Alright, this is cool enough. I can get back in the glass furnace. The clear glass is held in a crucible in the bottom of the furnace.
Yeah.
The crucible can hold up to 150 pounds of molten glass. The orange glow, that's from the temperature. Anything you heat up to 2,000 degrees is going to glow bright orange like this, if it can handle that kind of heat at all. So I'm using a larger block, trying to pull the glass off the blowpipe. I like to get the glass symmetrical once again. It's off the pipe and symmetrical. The next tool I'll use is called a pair of jacks, and I'm going to start a jack line. This will be where the piece comes off the blowpipe a bit later in the process. It will need to be the thinnest portion of the piece. But time now for a little more heat. So the clear glass I use, I make it right here in this glass furnace. I start out with a substance that's called batch. Batch is made up of all the chemicals in the glass in a formula that's been specifically designed for hand blowing. Primary ingredients in the batch are silica, soda, and limestone. Other components are added in very small amounts to decolorize the glass, to change the thermal properties and help with the workability. All the components are mixed together, a little bit of water is added to cut down the dust, and you end up with pellets. To turn those pellets into glass, you have to first preheat your glass furnace to at least 2250 degrees. Then I'll shovel the batch in, and because it takes that amount of heat, the chemical reaction to take place, and it's only then that the glass is formed. All right, got a lot of heat in the piece now. We use some gravity to make the piece longer. Most all the tools we use for shaping the glass were designed along with or even before the blowpipe, which was invented 2,000 years ago. This tool is the exception, quite a bit newer. It's called a steamer pad. This is some sort of a high-tech spun graphite thing. I really don't know how it was made, but I like the way it works. I can change the shape of it, depending on what part of the bubble needs to be formed. And it's as near as you can ever get to actually touching the hot glass. So adjust the jack line. We've got a pretty good shape now. This spot there, I might put some more clear in, light in. So the next step is to form the bottom of the cup part of the tankard. And to do that, I would like to almost double the diameter. I want to increase the length about 50% to get the glass to move that amount. It's going to have to be as hot as I can get it while still holding it on the blowpipe. As the glass gets hotter, it moves more freely, and then I can shape it more easily but at the same time, more affected by gravity. And so, as the glass gets hotter, I'll have to be turning the pipe faster and faster, and that's just to try to keep it from dripping off the end of the pipe. Gravity now is going to help me out. It's going to make the piece longer. I have a steel plate over here I'll use to chill the bottom as I blow out the sides. Back to the bench. Touch up the jack line. Now using the steel blades of the jacks, I'd like to chill and set the lower part of the cup of the tanker. And this glass is designed in such a manner that it becomes rigid when you cool it all the way down to 1225 degrees. When it's above that temperature, as it is here in the base, you can shape it. In this case, I've been down at the bottom. So now I should have a nice smooth base for the piece to stand on. If you're wondering about the bits of smoke and flame you see from time to time, that's just from wax. I put on the jacks, try to keep them lubricated, so they'll slide over the glass rather than scratching. And all that smoke and flame is absolutely necessary. There's only the slightest possibility that I might be a little bit of a pyro. Maybe. A little bit. In any event, I've done all the work on the piece that can be done on the blowpipe. The bottom, 2.5 inches of the cup has been formed. I need to next attach a punty rod to the center of the bottom. When that's firmly attached, I'll break the piece off the blowpipe. With it on a punty, I'll be able to open up the mouth of the piece, and then a handle will follow. For now, the shape is where I'd like to be at this stage, so I just want to put enough heat in the glass to keep everything stable while I'm doing the punty together. And that's about an 8 count. Hang the piece up. For the punty, I'll use this solid rod. Unfortunately, it will not attach directly to the bottom of the piece. I need to put a little bit of hot glass on the rod, shape and chill it on the marble. And what I've done is to push a button of hot glass beyond the end of the punty. It's that button of glass which will attach to the bottom of the piece. Now make sure the punty's centered and it can handle the weight. Then I'll score and chill the jack mark, putting some stress in the glass. At that point, a tap and the piece comes off. Blowpipe in the can. Bring the piece back to the glory.
That's just a piece of glass.
There's a couple of factors involved in the piece coming off the blowpipe so rapidly. First off, the jack line was the thinnest portion of the piece, and that gave the glass a thin place to break. Also, the blowpipe helped out. The steel in the pipe pulling down the glass, and so that made the jack line also the coldest part of the piece. So it's cold enough that a wet file stressed the glass. So I stressed and scored all the way around the tap. The piece popped right off, and there it is on the punty. I even managed to get it centered up. Woohoo! It's always good. So the next step is to finish the cup by opening up the mouth, which now needs to be the very hottest part of the piece so it can form. Just after being the coldest part so it can come off the blowpipe. So I'm concentrating as much heat as I can around that lip, the area behind it. A little bit of heat on the punty from time to time. The steel rod also pulls heat out of the glass. And if the joint between the punty and the bottom of the piece ever gets too cold, the piece will end up on the floor and that. Well, that can't ever be a good thing. And now, so I'm watching it expand. Looks like the blue is heating up a little quicker than everything else. It's starting to flare out a little more. We'll heat the punty and back to the bench. Now at the bench, I'll use the jacks, this time on the inside. Open up the cup.
Jeez. This looks like clay, doesn't it?
On the outside to smooth the outer wall. One of the challenges of working with mobile colors is that they expand and contract at different rates. And it shows up in the mouth. I'd like it to be flat. It's going to vary in thickness, but you got one or the other. So I'd like it to be flat. Wax from Jackson. And that's going to be the cup for the tankard.
Oh, is that
Of course,
really?
to be a tankard, it's got to have a handle. Sometimes there's a more obvious spot for a handle. Really, I want to put it right there. Back in the glory hole, put some heat in the punty. A little bit of a balance now. Too little heat in the punty, the piece ends up on the floor. Too much heat in the body, it distorts. And I'll hang the piece up again. Now for a handle. For me, attaching a handle to a tankard is the most exciting thing at the festival. Of course, I don't get out much, but I'm taking glass at about 2,000 degrees. I need to rapidly turn this into what we would call a bit. A bit would be any glass added to a piece in progress. This might more precisely be called a handle bit because, well, that is what it's going to be used for. Shade chill the glass. Bring the exterior temperature all the way down to about 1,200 degrees. Find that spot that I picked out earlier for the handle. Set the bottom. Pull up. Cut off what I need. Set the top of the handle. A little bit of shaping of the steel rod and back into the glory hole before the punty gets too cold.
Jeez.
Like I say, they don't let me out much. Now, I suppose there's 100 people in the country that could do that. You don't think so? Maybe. And now we're using just a piece of steel and gravity. I want to shape the handle. Gravity helps me out, smoothly making the handle longer. When it's long enough, I'll support, shape, chill it with the steel rod. A little bit more like that, push it in there, center it up a little better. And that is going to complete the shaping on this piece. A little tankard, the colors are red, white, and blue. I'm going to do one more little flash of heat to further equalize the temperature between the body of the piece and the handle. Then I'll take the piece off the punty. That should make it easier to use. I'll be taking the piece off the punty over on the other side of the studio. Pick up my mess on the way. Take the piece off the punty. I first need to put on the big glove. Preheat the glove with some heat from the punty. Then I'll use a piece of steel, kitchen knife. Show the joint between the punty and the bottom of the piece. 1/2 inch of solid glass breaks with one little tap. Now with the big glove, I can pick up the piece, which is still in the neighborhood of 1,000 degrees when I stick it down in this box, and that's so no one can look at it. No. That's an annealing oven. And every piece I make must be annealed. That's a 2-part process of stress relief followed by slow cooling. If I had tried to place that little tankard on the marker in about 15 minutes, you could pick up the broken pieces and really that's all that will be left. The glass can't stand to cool that rapidly. So what I must do is first put the glass at a temperature that's high enough that the individual molecules of glass can move around a little bit, and over time, the stress I put in the glass, pushing and shoving and shaping with all the steel tools, well, that stress will flow out naturally. Of course, if I get the temperature too high, the molecules will move around too fast, and then the shape changes. The piece could literally collapse. For this formula of glass, the proper annealing temperature is 890 degrees. The second part of the process is slow cooling, and that's dependent upon the glass thickness. So every day at 3 o'clock, I go fishing. After fish shaped like this guy. Now, I had something in mind earlier, but then someone bought a fish, so I'm going to replace that one. The fish today will be opal teal, green and blue, and the colors will all be twisted and swirled together. That makes a really pretty fish. A lot of opal teal in the first part, and then down to blue. What a great fish. But you know, I'm very proud of this fish also. Well, it is, after all, a goldfish. And you know how coy they can be. Yeah. Well, that's going to be real good up there, just jumping up and down. Well, whatever color, if today's fish works out like I'm hoping it will, there'll be a ball like this at the base of it, and that will be the thickest piece of glass in the annealer today. Unfortunately, because of the glass thickness, it's going to require an annealing cycle that's over 14 hours long. So, what I have to do, first thing this morning I set the annealer at 890. It'll be held there until after the last demonstration today. Only then can it be turned down, and even then, because of the glass thickness, it will take overnight to cool. I won't be able to touch that tankard again until first thing tomorrow morning. At that point, everything comes out of the annealer. There'll be a sharp area where the punting popped off the bottom. That's a hallmark of hand-blown glass, but it's sharp, will need to be ground down. I'll then sign number, date the piece, price it, and I'll get it ready to set out with the rest of my wares. Unless someone would like to buy that very one from the annealer, I could pack it up and ship off to you middle of the week. If you have any questions, please stand by. I would really like to answer any questions you may have. Or if you take a few moments, stop by the shop, check out some of my other work. And I would like to thank you so much for joining us today at the Carolina Renaissance Festival. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would have said no.